Perfect. All right. Sorry about that. Well, I was saying good morning, good afternoon to everybody, wherever you are in the world. We appreciate you joining us for Community Live number 15, Claris FileMaker 2024 and Enhancements for Easier Development. We're really glad to have you all today. I do want to just kick this off today by saying that obviously Doug Wallis is here and we're all very excited for Doug. However, literally in the last 30 minutes, all of his power and internet was knocked out by a major storm going on where he's located. So Doug is using his hotspot and his ingenuity to try to make this community live go smoothly. But we just ask for everybody's patience as we try to navigate this unforeseen circumstance here. But with that being said, I just want everybody to just remind everybody in WebEx, if you have any questions, please use the chat. We want this to be engaging and we invite everybody to ask questions. We've also just launched a poll here that we would love everybody to answer for us. The poll today is, are you using FileMaker 2024? Are you using it in production for testing? Maybe you're not using it yet. Maybe you're planning to. And there's also some free form there where you can enter some free text there. But we'd love to know if you are using FileMaker 2024 today. Again, we invite as many questions as you all have for us. Please use the chat that's located directly in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And yeah, we look forward to making the most out of this community live today. While you all do the poll, I'll take a minute just to introduce myself. My name is Alex Milinovich. I've been at Claris for 7 years now, mostly on the business side. I've run sales and customer success for the Americas region, but I've spent my entire adult career around FileMaker. Prior to my role at Claris, I actually was a Claris partner, working with a bunch of different customers as a developer and project manager. And prior to that, I cut my teeth as a developer in a manufacturing environment. Fun fact, when I started, I worked for a company that had 0 FileMaker applications. And at the time I left, we were able to scale 87 different FileMaker custom apps globally across 1,200 users. So I'm a huge FileMaker fanboy, which is what brought me to Claris, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you today. I'd like to transition to Doug. Doug, would you mind introducing yourself for us?
Of course. So, hi everyone. So my name is Doug Wallis. I've been at Claris.
Doug, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but we cannot hear you.
It's weird because it's saying it's fine.
Never mind, Doug. We can't hear you in the room, but it looks like the attendees can. So go ahead.
Cool. So, hi everyone. My name is Doug Wallis. Sorry about being in this. We have a storm across France and going into Germany that's coming from our nice friends from North America. And basically, we have two trees actually just fell on the power line, actually just cut off the internet for the whole neighborhood. So I'm doing this on my phone. So I'm hoping this is going to basically work out properly. So I was saying basically I've been at Claris for about 10 years now. I started as a system engineer, worked my way to the product team, and now I'm actually back into what I actually prefer doing, which is called platform evangelism. So I've been doing a lot of work with the product team, and I'm kind of working with Andy Lecate, who's our director of platform management. And the reason I'm actually doing this sort of new role is we want to make sure people kind of understand what we are building, why we are doing it, and how it's actually helping you be able to actually sort of use what you're doing. And on the other side of it is to be able to make sure that we tell you what we build, what you can do with it. But the other side is we want to know what you need from us so that we can actually feed the information back to the product team to engineering so that what they can build is actually what you need out of a product. So for those who've actually seen recently, we had a conference in Malmö, Sweden, a couple of days ago. There was one in Japan the week before that. And a lot of the things that we actually sort of talk about is all the work that we're doing both on FileMaker Connected Studio to make your life a lot easier, and so that you can use the new tool that we have, so you can actually start progressing with us with the flow of the new features that we have. So we're going to do this sort of 2 sessions on FileMaker 21.1. There's so much stuff I talk about, we can do everything in one go. So the idea was to be able to actually split basically in 2 sessions. So the first one today is essentially with Alex, we're going to go through some of the enhancements we've actually brought to FileMaker Go and to FileMaker Pro. And then next week, on the 5th of December, so in 2 weeks' time, and hopefully the internet will be back by then, I'll do one with Ronnie Rios, who's our PM on AI and doing a lot of stuff on server, where we'll go through all the enhancements we've done to artificial intelligence in FileMaker and all the work we've actually done inside of FileMaker Server. So I'm going to go through some of the new stuff that we've done. If you have questions, you've got the chat. You can actually sort of use that to actually answer all the chat. I'm going to go through a couple of slides. Hopefully, most of it will actually sort of go through to your hand properly. I'll try to go slowly. If you have any questions, just go ahead, and we'll actually sort of can actually sort of see how that goes.
Yeah, Doug. Hey, we'll kick off here in a second. I do want to read some of the poll results, but actually first, I've watched enough community lives. I know we don't usually get questions from the introduction portion, but Doug, I can't resist. We have a question here saying, we only see a picture of you, Doug, since your video's down. How do we know it's really you and not some freaky alien?
Freaky alien. I was actually imagining people actually asking questions whether I was actually AI. I could take a picture of myself and then post it, but that would probably crash my internet. So you just have to actually just take my word for it. But basically, anyone on the call that actually knows my voice will actually know it's me, because you can actually get basically a French guy with an English name that doesn't really exist in other places.
We'll take your word for it, Doug. We'll take your word for it. All right, to go to the poll results here, it looks like the overwhelming answer here is that yes, most of you are using it in production, so that's great to hear. The second answer is that a lot of people are using it for testing, so good to know that at least you're using it and probably planning to move to it. And then doesn't look like many people are saying they are not planning to use it. It looks like some of you are just kind of planning your transitions over, which is great. Also, for some of the people that said that said they're still waiting and not live on there, it looks like the main reason is just bugs. So hopefully we can address some of that today, instill some confidence that we do hear you, we do work through those bugs. And yeah, let's go from there. So with that being said, again, we are here today to talk about FileMaker 21.1.1. Doug, before you get into the content, I'm just curious. I know that you also are a huge FileMaker fan. What's your favorite feature from FileMaker 21.1.1?
So the more I was actually thinking about it, even last week at the conference, early this week in the conference, and then creating some of the content around it, the one I kind of like the more and more is actually layout calculations. So we've brought different versions, but in 21.1, we've been able to actually fix quite a lot of issues in terms of how we actually leverage the calculation engine inside the layout calculation. And about 2 days ago, I was talking to a partner in Sweden. They create vertical solutions globally, and they were kind of playing around with this new layout calculation, and it was like, this is finally easy for us to be able to create multilingual system where you can actually do the work once and then export all the information out of FileMaker as an XML and get translation and then build back the solution. So it's one of the features that I'm thinking in a lot of cases to build proper layout in FileMaker without having to actually create unstalled calculation in FileMaker, which always makes your solution out better and forces the developer to create a lot of fields actually not necessary. It is going to be, for me, one of the very useful features that we have in the product.
Awesome. Well, Doug, thanks for that. And I'd officially like to kick it off. I see that you were able to get your screen share working, so I think so far so good. So let's kick off the first section here, Doug. Let's talk about pain relievers and community requests.
Yeah. So one of the things that we try to do
sorry,
when we
Doug,
do a
hey,
view. Yeah.
Doug, sorry, we're not seeing your slides move. We're only seeing the FileMaker 2024 title slide.
Yeah, I haven't moved yet.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Okay. Then move to the next one. So to basically is why do we do a V1 release roughly 3 to 4 months after the main release? Essentially, the V1 that we're trying to actually do the major release is based on customer feedback. So we have a roadmap. We publish a lot of the work that we do of the roadmap on our community website. But the idea is to be able to actually fix as many of the issues that come out of the main release, because there might be OS updates done by either Microsoft or Apple. There might be some regression bugs that actually get created when we put new features in. There might be third-party tools that we use inside our system get updated. So the V1 actually is kind of an important one. And when we bring new features, the new features based on work that we do internally, we work with partners, we work with ETS users, so people that actually test it. And then when we bring it to the bigger community, like all the users, that's where we get a bit more sort of hands-on people playing with it. And sometimes they'll say, well, this feature doesn't really work nicely now. And essentially, a lot of cases is because you've been using FileMaker for a long time. You have solutions that actually run your company. You can't update the day after FileMaker 21.1 comes out. And in a lot of cases, you have so much information in your system. Maybe some of the things that we're actually building could break one of the feature they're using, or by enhancing it changes the way that actually the feature works. So the idea is by the feedback, we can actually work on it and be able to actually sort of fix it. And this is what this 21 is all about. So again, if you have a valid contract with FileMaker 21 or Claris and on the FileMaker, you'll be able to actually sort of get it. So you can get it from your ESD page, you can get Pro from our website, and you have the finished goods, just go to our website and you'll be able to actually sort of get the link to actually be able to actually download it. The one thing which is kind of nice and the way we've been working is because we have a system with engineering team to be able to make sure customers' issue actually works on quite soon after the main release, it allows us to actually be able to do a lot of improvements. And 21.1 has a huge amount of improvements. And again, the reason why we're actually splitting basically the work between 2 sessions is we can actually be able to actually talk about 21.1 in about 45 minutes and actually answer your questions. So the work that we've actually been doing on around FileMaker 21.1, there's a lot of stuff about AI. We'll talk about this next week. But essentially is we've been doing a lot of work on testing against macOS Sequoia and iOS 18. So macOS and iOS basically have been leveraging a bit more of the new technologies that Apple uses within Xcode. So there was a lot of work that we had to do to make sure that this new version of FileMaker would work properly on macOS and iOS. And currently, we haven't seen any issues. There was a couple of issues in 21 with flickering on the Mac, but pretty much everything is gone. One of the major pain reliever, and then we'll talk a bit more afterwards, is around Open Quickly. It is a new feature, and the idea was to be able to really sort of listen to your needs and offer you the control that you actually need from this new feature. So for those that actually haven't used it, Open Quickly is very much about Spotlight for FileMaker, and with that, we give you more control. Next week, we'll go back on FileMaker, but we've, again, all the features coming from your request. On the FileMaker Pro side of it, the 2 areas where we sort of worked on was layout calculation. And again, the pain reliever that we're actually sort of trying to get out of that was to be able to create out of FileMaker a representation in XML that actually works a lot better than it used to do in the past. So for those that have actually never used that feature, we have something called save a copy as XML inside the FileMaker. Previously, we had a tool called the database DTR, developer design report, which basically takes a FileMaker solution and exports all the information of your layout, your table, your fields inside an XML file to be able to actually see whether you have issue with your layout, your fields, and that information. With this new version that we're kind of calling now internally XML2, we'll bring you more tools for you to be able to actually find when you have errors in your system and how those errors actually going to affect you. We have a new feature now, basically, where you can export extra information around the analysis tool. So if you want to use event perceptions, if you want to use Inspector Pro, there's a various sort of system out there. It's going to enable to actually sort of see where your system might be having issues the whole way through. One of the things that we have been able to actually work out is basically chunking up calculation, whether they are in solutions inside the tables or whether they're on a layout, to be able to make it easier for people to actually do localization. So we have a lot of developers on the planet that will actually leverage FileMaker for development in English, but their customer might be using different language, French, German, Italian, or Japanese. And with the previous version of layout calculation, it was kind of breaking that. So we're able to actually sort of fix that kind of easily. And again, we're actually sort of working on small areas to make your life a lot easier. So there's another bit of work we've done on leveraging whether we need to do index searching when you're doing confound sunset. So this is a specific use case where we're giving you that power to be able to decide to do a find without an index. So let's say you have a big system, you run through like a million records, you do a first search, and then you want to do a second one. Instead of actually having to go through the whole index, which sometimes can take a bit of time, FileMaker will only look at the result, at the record that you've already got in the result, and just makes everything a lot quicker.
Doug, hey Doug, let's take a pause for some questions here. I know you have an upcoming section where you're talking a little bit more about layouts. So there is a little bit of dialogue about, aren't layout calculations fragile? Do you want to address that in a couple minutes, or do you want to address that one now?
I can do it now. So in the previous version that we had inside of FileMaker, we had an issue where basically the calculation engine was actually evaluating the text that is actually stored in that object that we call layout calculation. And so we've been playing around with it, because essentially what you had before was a text object that was picked up by the calculation engine to be able to actually evaluate that. And if you were changing your table names, if you were changing your field names, if you were moving from different languages, that text object wasn't being changed, because it was just one text object that basically the calculation engine, or the database engine can actually not talk to. So what we did change basically was to be able to get the whole FileMaker system to talk to that text object to be able to actually change the content that is inside it. So if you change the table names, or the table occurrences name, those changes will actually be done in that text object or layout calculation. So you don't actually have to go back inside it when you're making changes a bit everywhere. Everything will be done properly inside it. Again, if you're moving from using FileMaker in English and then using on the French system, the calculation will actually work a lot better before, because we've been able to actually chunk it in the background to make it a proper tool. Again, the work that I use sometimes, and I think we haven't been doing a great job of it, what is actually the engine doing is actually evaluating the calculation inside that text object and actually sort of running it. So it has sometimes, it's a bit slow. Some people have been saying that basically it takes a bit of time to actually sort of do it. But essentially what it's doing, it's actually loading the data and actually run the calculation and actually applying it on the layout. So if you have a very long calculation field that you want to do, it's kind of clunky. The other thing as well is when people were double clicking inside the layout calculation object, it will actually resize completely the layout if it was at the bottom. This issue has been fixed. Now, if you double click on it, you'll be able to actually see all the text, but the object itself isn't really resizing the whole layout, and it just doesn't break basically your layout. So there was sort of the main concerns that we had inside the system.
Thanks, Doug. Hey,
Uh,
sorry,
yeah,
we're just dealing with some logistics here. We're getting some feedback in the chat that some people can see your screen while others cannot. Um, yeah, I think it looks like the majority can see it. So let's keep pushing forward. For anybody that's having an issue, I advise just try to connect on the laptop. Perhaps it's a mobile device issue or a connection issue where you are, but it looks like the majority have it working. So let's just move forward. Doug, you called out we have an awesome upcoming community live about AI. So anybody that's interested in AI, definitely encourage them to join that community live. But I do have one question here that we'll jump into. Gregory says, our biggest concern with AI-based features is the privacy of the information, since AI uses a lot of cloud-based calculations. How do you protect that information?
so the way we've done it for the script sets that we have on the functions is we give you the option to be able to use whatever AI provider is really out there. The idea for us is we have to support what I call public AI and private AI. So public AI basically is you sending information to your OpenAI account. We're now supporting Cohere, which is another provider of those systems, or you can use an open source LLM that is actually running directly on your machine. The big AI war that's going to come about is not whether it's going to basically replace humans, which is always a theory, or beside job. It's essentially about whether you want to use a AI that's actually created for everyone, or a model that's used by everyone, or whether you want to use a model that you actually control, that you can actually fine tune, and you can actually get it to work for your needs. So when you use OpenAI or ChatGPT, the data that you have is basically has everything that is on the internet. So when you ask the questions, it's going to give you results based on your way, but it's going to look pretty much everywhere. In other cases, it doesn't have business data, it doesn't actually know your customer and so on like that. What we've actually built inside of FileMaker 21 is the option for you to be able to use a local model. So something that you install on your MacBook, you can install that on your own servers, and you'll be able to actually talk directly to that. So your data isn't being shared with the rest of the internet. It stays basically on the machine. It's using the power of the model to be able to create what we call the vector embeddings, and we'll talk more next week about it. And it allows you to be able to actually do just some searches locally on your machine with your data, and nothing actually goes out on the internet. So it's exactly the same way as you putting data into FileMaker fields and using the index to do search. Semantic file using local MMMs is doing it the same way. It is just the way you asking the questions gives you better results, because the model is allowed to actually interpret the way the question being asked and to look at the content and the meaning of the question versus just looking at specific words in your system. So it is very safe if you're using open source LLM. Nothing is going to go on the internet, and you can run your system without having to be connected to a Wi-Fi or internet network at the same time.
Thanks for that, Doug. We see a few more questions. We are going to move forward now, Doug. Your next topic you want to touch out is layout themes. I encourage the audience, please keep the questions coming. We are going to have a few more pauses for questions, and we will try to address as many as we can. But Doug, talk to us about layout themes.
Yeah. So layout themes is something that we rejoice every day, because you can create your own themes inside of FileMaker. You have complete control over the layout. But there is one thing which is a real pain in FileMaker that we've had for a long time, is when you create a new layout, it is basically always using the same default theme, which is basically Apex Blue. So you create a new layout, or it's going to use maybe the last one you've leveraged. What we have in 20.1 is now we give you the option to be able to set up a default theme. So whenever you create a new layout, it will always use the theme that we actually called. So the idea is to allow you to really create a theme that you'll use across all your system, and whenever you create a new theme, you're going to be able to actually sort of leverage that. And there's quite a bit of work that we're doing for this 21.1 and the next versions of FileMaker around the theme, is we want to give you the control to be able to modified themes of your layout in a nicer way. One of the things we've actually added on top of it is you can now delete the classic theme directly from your theme. Before it was actually kind of stuff in your system. It wasn't taking a lot of space, but it was still basically sort of being there. The journey that we're basically trying to actually take you on is allowing you to be able to potentially have reusable code when you're creating layouts. The biggest pain as a FileMaker developer, and I've been doing this for 30 years, is when you create a new layout, it is an empty layout. There is nothing on it. If you have created a navigation bar that you want to reuse across multiple layouts, you have to go to a previous layout and you have to copy and paste it into new layout, make sure the part size is always nicer, and this is kind of a pain. What we're doing in the background is basically leveraging all the various tools that we have, like the add-ons, the XML, to be able to give you potentially the power to create new layouts, but with reusable code. So similarly, when you create a new layout nowadays, you can specify whether you want a form, whether you want to report and stuff like that, but you can't really sort of modify what's really in there. The work that we're doing in the background is to be able to actually give you a lot of the more blast powers. So we're doing this basically in small batches because we want to get you to actually be able to actually have the time to start getting ready for this. And so the idea is to be able to go to people is, now that we can explain to you what we're doing in the future, you have to maybe start looking at your layouts and your theme just to see whether your theme is actually working properly. And it's always a nice way to be able to make sure that you haven't got objects that have themes actually not really, or styles not really stay properly in the theme, because that always adding extra work for the rendering engine to be able to properly show you the different styles that you have in your system. So it's a nice way to be able to actually get you to look at your layout, your themes, to be able to start cleaning up so that when we have options to be able to use reusable code, you know it's going to work properly in the background.
Doug, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a lot of reactions coming in and a lot of people just excited about this. Actually no questions about this. So I think that means one, you crushed it, and two, it's an awesome feature. Given that we have some time here, Doug, I'm gonna just double back to a question that we didn't get to related to AI. Again, there's an upcoming community live all about this, so I encourage everyone interested in AI to check that community live out. But Doug, Andrew asks, is the AI engine GDPR and HIPAA compliant?
So the models are the open source. If they are running inside your system, so the compliancy kind of is there if you're using it properly. So the way basically a model actually works is you're sending it data. The model inside it basically creates a vector embedding of that data and then sends the data back to your system. So the AI doesn't keep your data. The model doesn't keep your data. It basically translates text or images into a vector embedding. So the model itself isn't really, I would say, GDPR compliant or any type of compliancy. It is just a translator. It would be the same as you would basically use the base64 encode inside the FileMaker. It's just transforming from one format into another one, and it doesn't keep your data in the system. When people ask the question normally of GDPR compliance, they're asking about whether OpenAI or the big providers are actually GDPR compliant. And OpenAI, pretty much all of them are, because as soon as you actually have an account with them and you start paying for it, the model they're using is stored on their server. But when you're talking to that model, it's only talking to your account. So you have kind of an instance within OpenAI and something like those, and your data gets in that environment. It doesn't get shared with the rest of the internet. It just basically stays in your account. So always the idea that people have to be careful about is there is a difference between ChatGPT and OpenAI. OpenAI is a provider of models that can do vector embeddings. ChatGPT is a product offered by OpenAI that leverages the tool that I have internally to be able to create a chat AI that people can actually talk about. So imagine the same way and I always talk about it, is Amazon. AWS is part of Amazon. Amazon is a company that sells product on the internet, and they leverage AWS. But AWS can be leveraged also by customers. And so it's not because you're leveraging AWS services that Amazon, which is in the product, the same that you think that you use services, is going to use your data. It's basically two very sort of different products. So ChatGPT is a product built on OpenAI, but it could be built on any sort of system on the side of it. So you kind of safe on that area. So HIPAA is always kind of a bit of different. Anything that has to do with health essentially is a bit more awkward. Normally, what I tend to actually get people is if you're looking to actually use AI with HIPAA, or whether it's on a medical environment, data, or even legal, it might be better first to sort of leverage that using an open source model that you actually leverage locally, so that you're very safe that way, and then you know exactly what's going on and how you can actually sort of leverage it. So it's kind of always easier in this environment not to play too much with fire.
Thanks for that, Doug. Next, we're jumping into one of what I think is the coolest features, the new Open Quickly feature.
Yeah. So Open Quickly is something that we've had people asking about. There was some stuff that we looked at a couple of years ago, and then when the engineering team and the product team, we kind of looked at it, we were like, well, actually is what we want it to be for the end users is we want it to be a spotlight. Like everyone that has a Mac running on macOS, or whether they're basically using even iPhone or iPad, have been used to this spotlight engine where you go, you have a nice box, you type into that box information, and it gives you the results, and it's put into like a list view or kind of a report view, so you can actually clearly see how everything is actually sort of being shown. And this is actually what we worked on. So we had a couple of iterations of how we've done it. So the idea is essentially it is done for developers, so people creating the layouts, but it's done as well for the end users, because there might be these cases where sometimes they need to be able to actually find the file on when they actually have FileMaker working. But essentially it's mainly for developers. So the way we've done it is we give you access to be able to actually the option to be able to do searches across a file that's actually kind of running, or other files running in the background, to be able to look for file names, to be able to look for fields, to be able to look for scripts, table occurrences, pretty much everything that the screen of your computer shows you when you're doing FileMaker work. So not looking at the data, really basically all the tools that actually allow you to create the great solutions that you use day in, day out. So when you're using it, it gives you the result. And then when you double click on the result, it's going to allow you to be able to actually take you directly to that page. We've made small enhancements as well on when you're doing searches of Open Quickly, when you're doing it through the relation graph. It's only going to do searches on the relation graph. It's not going to start looking for files or script or in other places or scripts. It will just look at what's in the screen. So if you have a very large relation graph with a lot of links going to a lot of table occurrences a bit everywhere, it's a nice way to be able to actually take it directly to a layout or a field. Same way when you have a huge amount of scripts and you know the name of the scripts, but when going to the script workspace and having to actually scroll up and down to find it, this is a kind of nice way to be able to actually go inside it. The other aspect of it that we had is we have people saying is, as a developer, I want to make sure that I can control who's actually using it. So if I've actually set up a system where I've got hidden layouts or hidden windows that I don't want my user to be able to see, is I don't want them to be able to go to Open Quickly and then start basically typing the name of a window and suddenly having a window being shown to the end user where it should be basically in the background and not be able to actually use for that. So we created a new option in the privilege set to allow you to be able to control who, based on the privilege set, can actually use Open Quickly completely. So if you're not allowing a user to use Open Quickly, when they actually activate the key command for Open Quickly, they will only be able to actually search through the files. They won't be able to actually sort of get to other places. So the idea is to be able to actually really give the Open Quickly control to the developers so they can actually sort of do whatever. The one caveat on top of it is the full admin user will have full access to Open Quickly. So if you have end users that have a full admin privilege set, they would be able to actually do the same amount of work that you are doing as a developer. So in a lot of cases, you might need to readjust how you want to do privilege set so that users that do not require full admin should have their own privilege set being used for them, so that you actually create a safer environment and less prone to basically having users be able to actually do things that you don't actually want them to actually be able to do. All of that work is really sort of thanks to you. Like, without the community, it would have taken way more time to be able to actually fix it. And we were talking to Claris partners, a lot of developers on, hey, we have this feature. We want to make sure it works for you. So whatever you need, we need to be able to actually sort of provide that to you. So again, this is what we're trying to actually really get across is if you have issues with it and there's something that you think we should do differently, just email us or just on community and just says, if we had this, it will make it easier for me to leverage. And then we'll work with the engineering team to see whether it's actually doable first to actually be able to actually create it, because in some cases, it might not be able for us, something that we can do for you.
Hey, Doug, this wouldn't be fun if I didn't hold your feet to the fire a little bit. Eric says, Open Quickly is sometimes very slow to prompt. Any advice on what Eric and others can do to maybe optimize their experience?
So the way it works is it does a search based on keystroke, which is kind of cool sometimes, but in other places sometimes it is not ideal. So if you have thousands of table occurrences, thousands of scripts, and then you take the A key, you're gonna basically have a huge amount of actually data coming in. We are working on this to make it easier, in a lot of cases, on the new version 21.1, you have an option to be able to actually look only in the current file. Just make sure you have this on, because sometimes if you have a multi-file solution, it's going to start looking kind of everywhere. But we're doing it, maybe the next version, give you the option to be able to actually do on keystroke searches or on completion searches, like you do in FileMaker. Because like we've seen is if you have a huge amount of stuff, it's going to take a bit more time. So what you can do if you're knowing it is basically and it's being very, very slow, is I would type what you're looking for inside a text editor and then copy that string directly into the Open Quickly. And that way it's going to basically just look for like straight away. And that should be a bit quicker. But we've seen your issue before. And so we're working on a way so that it doesn't do keystroke searching, but key completion, keyword completion searches, just to make your life a lot easier.
Cool. And then last one on this topic, Doug, and I sincerely apologize for butchering your name. Jan Andrea asks, I would like to block Open Quickly for users. Is that possible?
So you can block, like I was saying, basically the access to the layouts. The Open Quickly feature itself, you can't really block it, but the only thing you'll be able to actually search for is actually file. So the OpenK is part of basically the FileMaker command line. We are looking maybe in the next version to integrate that with the menu, but because it's a different menu, we're not really sure how it's going to work. But yeah, for the time being, is the only thing we can control is through the user management system, where you'll be able to actually, through the privilege set, be able to actually block the use of looking for everything. So if they're being limited, they will only be able to actually look through files currently.
Thanks, Doug. All right, last section we're going to touch on, and I'll say this is one that my team here at Claris has gotten a ton of calls about. We removed limits for data API. Doug, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So for those who actually have no idea what Alex is talking about, when you get a FileMaker contract or a license, sort of user license, you get basically FileMaker Server, you get FileMaker Pro, you get FileMaker WebDirect, you get FileMaker Go, and we basically would give you the data API. So basically, it's an API service running off the FileMaker server that allows you to be able to get FileMaker to export data in a JSON format to web services, and the other way around to get web services to be able to actually talk to your FileMaker solution. So the dialogue used in between, the text, the format is actually JSON. It's a format that's actually kind of human readable, and it works really nicely. The one thing that we actually had in the contract was we would give you a data allowance per user per month. Basically, on your contract, you had 2 gig per month per user. That's 24 gig for the year per user. And then you multiply that by the number of users you have in your contract, which is a lot of data, but at the same time, it could be not a lot of data. And so for a long time, we had people using the PHP API into the FileMaker, WCP as well, XML API, to be able to actually leverage FileMaker as a data warehouse and export data or leverage that data on a web form in another system. And because we had this limitation on the other API, we had a lot of people who were going is, well, I'm not going to move to your data API usage because you've put a limit on the allowance. I do not know how much data is being transferred to my system. And honestly, as a developer, I don't really care. It's either I got access to the system and I can do whatever I want with it. But if you're putting limits, it's going to put me in a bind eventually. And because if one day it doesn't work because I've overrun my limit, I don't know what to do. I know that I can call Claris Sales and basically ask them to actually allow me to pay a bit more, but I don't know how much it's going to take me. And it basically can block your system. So we decided that basically it was creating so many issues to remove completely basically that limit. And so we completely remove data API as well as OData limits in your system. So now you can export and import data through the protocols as much as you want. There won't be any limits. The one thing to be mindful about is based on your contract. So even though there's enhancements inside the FileMaker admin console where you won't be able to actually see the limits that you previously had, it is based on your contract. So if you have a valid Claris contract with us, so you're buying FileMaker annual contracts or perpetual with maintenance, you will basically have that limit removed as well. So we want you to actually move to 21.1, but if you, for technical reason, you have to stick to FileMaker 2023 or version 20, or even the latest version of 19.6, but the version of 19.6 is still, it will be very soon end of life. You'll still be able to actually sort of access to that. So if you have a FileMaker 20 and you want to use it, it will be work fine. The one thing you'll see basically in your admin console is the data usage keeps on going up and your limit is still visible. But if you overreach your limit, your system isn't going to get blocked. Our license servers will be able to actually talk to your FileMaker server and will be able to actually reset it. If you have issues because you're really sort of using it massively and you really can't move across, just send us an email to our customer support team. We'll work it out in the background to make sure that your system is actually being reset. But basically, we just want to make it your life a lot easier. Again, the one thing I want to make sure everyone gets is you have to be under a valid live contract with us. If you have an expired perpetual license, you haven't got the maintenance, the data limit will actually stick there. So if you want more, you can actually reach out. I'm doing a bit of sales for Alex, but basically is you'll have to actually have a live contract to be able to actually sort of get to it. And this is a journey that I was just going to mention this. So this is a journey that we are putting across the whole Claris platform. So even in the next couple of months, you'll see that we're going to do the same on Claris Connect, whereby flows actually, or the steps basically in flows in Claris Connect, leveraging FileMaker solutions through the server will not be counted against your API request. So across the board, basically on the Claris platform, when all the tools work really nicely together, none of the traffic being exchanged by different FileMaker products will have a data limit when being used.
Thanks for talking through that, Doug. I do see some positive reactions coming in. Also, thanks for ending the sharing of your slides. Again, this conspiracy of whether you are really Doug or a Doug bot or a Doug alien, I want to keep feeding into that, and I want you to keep speaking through this picture. Oh, there he is.
So I'll just say, so it's close to 6 p.m. where I live because I live in the west coast of France, against the storm. I'm running off a battery that I have in the back from my laptop, but there's no more light basically, so I'm pretty much in the dark now. The only light that's coming out is from my laptop, so maybe you'll be able to see it.
Cool, Doug. Well, thank you. I do invite the questions to keep coming here from the audience. We're going to try to address as many as we can here. Doug, you obviously just talked about all the data API limits being removed. This is a very specific question, so I'll try to generalize it a little bit. But Randall is doing a transition in his company. They're moving from one CRM system to another. He's looking for integrations, and I'll call it out. He's looking for integrations between FileMaker and Salesforce. If there is not a plugin or something that already exists that Randall can use, would you say that removing data API limits would just make it easier for him to try to build his own integration?
Yeah, without a limit, it's going to be a lot easier because that way you won't have to figure out basically how much data is going from one system to the other. Yeah, the API services from Salesforce, they work really nicely. There's a bit of a learning curve. So if you haven't really gone on a lot of Salesforce work, they have those very, very sort of big APIs that goes into every direction. And we had this question every year, I think, when we have the DEF CON or Claris Engage nowadays. In a lot of cases, there's a bit of training that's needed. I would leverage some of our Claris partners because we have a Claris partner that have actually done that in the past. Because of the immensity of everything you can do with those APIs, sometimes it gets to be a bit hard to actually find exactly where you want your FileMaker data to go exactly in the right spot inside of Salesforce, but it's doable.
Thanks for addressing that one. Let's see. John asks, where can we see errors returned by execute SQL?
So the error that you'll see in that the error. So we've had to create basically this new function. So we had it basically in the past. It was just called SQL, and when you had an error, always coming back was the integration point. We had to create another one just to make sure that we could provide the full error. And if you had already used that feature, your script can actually get broken. What it's actually error is providing you is actually telling you in your query where you have the error. So you'll see basically when it spells out, it will go SQL, which is FileMaker Query Language. It will give you the amount of characters that you have in your query, and it will actually specify which character, number of the character that has the issue. So if you have 78 characters and your error is on 43, you go to basically character 43 in your list, and that's where you're going to have the error. It's not going to tell you the type of error it is. It's just going to tell you that it's not formatted properly, and it can't be run basically by the SQL or the SQL engine that actually runs in the background. So in a lot of cases, you'll see that it's it could be a spelling error, it could be errors in your data where you have corrupted data, but at least basically you'll be able to actually see it.
Cool. Thanks for that, Doug. I do want to call out we're at our 10-minute warning here. For those of you that have been a part of Community Lives before, you know that this is typically where we introduce a second poll. So we'd like to go live with that now. For the second poll, we are asking, after Doug just shared all this information and you got to watch this live stream, how likely are you to move to FileMaker 2024 if you are not already there? Highly likely, likely, not sure, not likely, or not at all. And then there's a bonus question in there. We want to know what pain reliever will have the biggest impact for you. I'm actually really excited to hear what people are going to say there. There's already been some dialogue in the chat, so make sure you answer what pain reliever will have the biggest impact for you. Doug, while we give people a few minutes to look at the poll there, do you have any tips for people that are looking to upgrade to 21.1? I know some of the calls that my team fields, and I know some of the calls that our support team gets, a lot of people are usually just very concerned about losing your data. Doug, I would just invite you to kind of alleviate some of that and get people confident in being able to upgrade.
Yeah, so your file format basically doesn't change. It's still a SMP 12. Moving from 20 or 19 to 21 doesn't create the issue because the file format is always the same. The one thing I tend to actually sort of get people to kind of understand is just to make sure that when you're actually doing the update the FileMaker server or stuff like that, is to keep a copy of it on the side. Do the server upgrade. Ideally, you want to do on a different machine to be able to actually sort of test it. And once you're actually having it running in a testing environment, if you can actually have a machine, is be able to just go through it and just see if everything works the same way. The one thing is that we changed the back of FileMaker in the code would be around those tools that I keep mentioning. So whether it's the OpenSSL for the security, there will be changes that we do to the relation to Bellis engine. So in most cases, there might be updates that we do from the Spotty tools that could potentially slow down some of your searches if you have error solution, or can do something different. And in these cases, we haven't got information unless we actually sort of start testing it. So if you have old solution that probably maybe crashed a couple of years ago and you're putting it across and the engine actually started changing in the background, it could have affected some of the information inside it. So always basically is open it on a different system, test it out, see what happens. It's a bit of a work, but at least once you actually have it, it's kind of nice. And when you're seeing, when you have like those issues, speed issues, and you start going into your layouts and your fields, that's where you'll start seeing that old code that you're not really using maybe can be removed or can be changed. In other cases, what I've seen, and I was talking to a lot of developers, is when they start looking at those layouts and they're going, well, I've got way too much calculation field in one table because I had to do it in the past because layout calculation didn't exist. Now maybe is the time to start saying, oh, maybe I should actually just use this new feature in my system to start cleaning up the environment. I know it's always nice when you have a system that keeps on running and you actually have to do updates, but when we have new features, the idea in those cases is to get, oh, I'm going to spend a bit of time making this nicer because it's going to work better, it's going to be more reliant, it's going to be less prone to crashes if you have any of those, and it will be a better user experience for your end users.
Doug, I'm gonna squeeze in a question. I'm gonna cap you if you could keep this to 2 minutes or less, please. But I think it's a really important question. Kate asks, oh, sorry, I just lost it. Kate asks for suggestions on what exactly to test. I'm assuming that Kate is asking about when moving to the latest version. I know this could almost be its own community live, this question. So Doug, let's cap it at, could you give your top 2 things to test?
So the top one is easy one, is the index. This is where basically sometimes you can have issues because the index might actually sort of have some issues. You could actually have data that's been imported into a field that is corrupted. So always test as much as you can your indexes. Value list sometimes is a nice way to go about doing it because I know that people tend to create long value lists that they don't really update, and sometimes you have corrupted data in those and you don't really see them. And the one thing I always kind of go through always is go through your layouts. I mean, just look at the load time that you're having in different places because sometimes there might be things that 10 years ago used to work really nicely and the OS has changed and stuff like that. So it might be a good way to be able to actually look for that. But the other cases where we have issues is, I would say, through the index that could be causing issues. Is that under 2 minutes?
Yeah, no, great job, Doug. All right, I want to close the loop on the poll again. How likely are you to move to FileMaker 2024 after watching this live stream? Again, overwhelming. 58% of you said highly likely. 23% said likely. It looks like almost nobody said not at all. So that is good. In terms of what pain reliever will have the biggest impact for you, there's a lot of good ones. let's see, just bug fixes. Yeah, bug fixes, but it looks like the runaway one is the layout calculations. Doug, are you surprised by that?
No,
Uh, cool. All
I
right.
did,
Well,
I did, I did vote for it as well. So maybe my vote put on the top. But yeah, it's one of the things that I think once people start sort of playing with it, they kind of like it, and it's removing this issue that we've had to actually do as FileMaker developer for a long time, of creating these fields that shouldn't actually have been created. So we can actually sort of doing this.
yeah, maybe that's cheating. I think presenter votes count for 10. So no, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, just to wrap up, I do want to make everybody aware that there is a recording of this that Rosemary will post to the community per usual. Again, apologies for some of the mess at the start of this call. Again, Doug is dealing with a little bit of a storm where he lives. So, Doug, thanks to you for being able to, I guess, navigate the waters, no pun intended. But appreciate you making this work and battling through and being resourceful to be here. I really appreciate it. This is not in my script, but I'll give a shout out to Angie, who's in the background here, answering people's chats and putting this all together. Angie, thank you so much. These community lives are appreciated by not only Claris folks, but obviously the community. So thank you for all of your work here. Thank you to you, the community, for coming, asking questions, keeping this engaging. We really appreciate it. These community lives couldn't go on without you. With that, I want to make sure that I invite everybody to the next live stream. It's a part 2 of this with an emphasis on AI. Doug's going to be showing off some really cool AI features. This next live stream will be on December 5th. I see that Angie did post the information here in the chat, but also, as always, you can go to claris.com and you'll get all the information you need there. Again, thanks to everybody for joining. We hope you have a great day, great night, depending on where you are, and we'll talk to you soon.